is up, bookworms and constant readers? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about the 30 Days of Night Omnibus. This is book 2 in that list I did a while back, 50 States, 50 Scares. I'll put a link up here for that video so you know what I'm talking about. Just a quick rundown. It was put out around Halloween of, I think it was last year, by the New York Times, and it was 50 of the scariest books that take place in each state. There's actually more than 50 books on the list. I've talked about it before on the channel. I did the first book a few months back, and I'll post that up here also. But this is book 2, and it takes place in Alaska. Let's talk about the cover. 30 Days of Night. This is the omnibus. It has 3 different stories in it. The first story is 30 Days of Night. The second story is Dark Days. And then the third is Return to Barrow. And that's where this takes place, Barrow, Alaska. So first, I want to talk about the bad when it comes to this. The worst thing is how this graphic novel is made. It's poorly made. I have graphic novels that are thicker than this one, and they have held together for years. This one started falling apart, and I was only maybe halfway through it. Some of these front pages here, if I was to turn this upside down, they would fall out. The glue and the binding, it's horrible. So my first suggestion to you is, if you want to read this, see if you can find the stories individually and buy it that way instead of all together in one book. Another thing to note, it's not a complaint, is you'll notice it's got a number 1 on the spine. There's also a second part to this, but from what I've read, it's not even worth your time. These are the 3 best stories, and these are the ones that you should stick with. And this wraps up really nicely. It doesn't leave you hanging, so it's totally fine just to read these 3, and that's what we'll be covering in the video. My second complaint is the artwork. It's just not my style. I'll show you a few examples. There's one. I'm not a fan of this art style. And the thing about this art style is that there are times you really can't tell what's going on in the panel, and so it makes the story harder to follow. And then the final complaint I have is the font that they use in the chat bubbles. That is oftentimes hard to read. I don't know what the font is called that they use, but I don't like it. You spend in quite a few instances trying to figure out, what a word is, because it's not a real clear font to read. But the story is fantastic. If you like stories about vampires, it's a fantastic story. It's fun to read. I thought it was a really well put together story. Each ending, it's kind of like you didn't see coming, holy crap moment. But I really enjoyed all 3 of the graphic novels. I believe 2 have been made into movies. 30 Days of Night with Josh Hartnett, that that stays pretty true to the comic. They make a few changes, but it stays pretty true to the first 30 Days of Night. And then the second one, it kind of deviates from the comic, but there's parts in the movie that are in the graphic novel, which is really cool to see come to life on screen. And I don't believe they have made a movie, Return to Barrow or 30 Days of Night Part 3. If I'm wrong, leave a comment below and I'll definitely check it out, because I did like the two movies I know of that have been made on this. So what is 30 Days of Night about? So this is where the story starts, and it takes place in Barrow, Alaska, and according to the book, Barrow, Alaska experiences 30 days of total darkness. No matter what time of day it is, it's dark. This actually does occur on the planet, but the authors, they didn't do their research. Barrow is a real place. It's the northernmost city in Alaska. It sits right on the coast of the Arctic Ocean. It's about 1,300 miles from the North Pole, and it experiences extremely cold weather most of the time, and it snows just about every month of the year. They don't actually have 30 days of darkness. They have like 66 days of darkness. The sun sets in November, and it doesn't rise for almost 70 days, and it's total darkness. And then they have the same thing happen in the springtime, where the sun will rise and it doesn't dip below the horizon for almost 70 days. And then the time periods in between are this weird, like, sunset twilight type of days. So when the sun does rise, it's not above the horizon for very long, but as the days go by, it gets longer and longer to where eventually it doesn't set. Some days will have like 30 minutes of sunrise, and then it's dark again, and then it'll have like an hour and 2 hours, and it gets longer and longer as the days go by and the earth tilts towards the sun. It's usually below freezing from like October to late May. There's roughly like 4,200 people that live in Barrow. So it's a very interesting place geographically, and that's what interested me when I looked it up, was the geography of the place and what it was like to live there. And it's in a place where really, like, humans shouldn't be living, but they do. So these vampires in the story, they have the idea of going to Barrow and having like a feeding frenzy for 30 days straight. They don't have to worry about the sunlight. They can just feed on the townspeople until the sun comes back up. And everything doesn't necessarily go their way, and things end badly both for the vampires and the humans. I won't spoil it for you, because I totally encourage you to either watch the movie or read the book. It is really cool. So then the second one, Dark Days, it picks up I think it's like 6 months or a year after the events of 30 Days of Night. And the sheriff of Barrow, his wife, survives the attack, and she writes a book about it and tells her story. And it's published as fiction. Nobody believes her story, and she starts going around to different college campuses and venues and doing these talks about the books. She wants people to know this story, know that vampires are real. And one of the things she starts doing in her shows is setting up UV lights on the stage, and she tells vampires in the audience to show themselves, or she's going to hit the lights. She hits the lights, these vampires burst into flames, everybody freaks out, and there are people that are starting to listen to her story and take it seriously. And the vampires, they want to shut her up. And then the vampire, like queen of the vampires, is named Lilith, and her husband died in Barrow. The sheriff actually kills him, and she wants revenge on the sheriff's wife. She wants to shut her up for getting people to take her seriously, and that's a threat to vampires because they've worked so hard to make everybody not believe in them. And the sheriff's wife learns of this vampire secret, and the vampires want this disc, or not disc, like a videotape of the attack on Barrow. And so she actually cuts a deal with Lilith. I'll give you the videotape, but I want this secret. And everything at this meeting goes to shit. Lilith ends up dying, and the ending, you're like, oh my god. It's really good how it builds up, because this woman hates vampires, and she ends up working out this deal with them and kind of cooperating with them, but with an ulterior motive. And it's really cool to see how everything plays out. And then the final story is Return to Barrow. In Return to Barrow, you have the sheriff's brother from the first book. He shows up in Barrow to be the new sheriff, and he really doesn't know anything that has gone on. He's heard rumors and stuff, and so the townspeople let him in on what is going on. He doesn't believe any of it, and then they give him this book, and it's kind of like a journal from one of the people that lived through that first attack. And these people, they're prepared, because ever since that first attack, before this winter darkness, they have vampires show up and try and attack the town. And so they fortified their town, and they have, all these plans in place and everything on how to survive the 30 days of night. Meanwhile, the vampires, they're kind of in chaos because they've lost their leadership, and they're just hell-bent on revenge, killing everybody in this town. And so they're planning this attack on the town. And once again, they have tactics that totally take the citizens of Barrow by surprise. And things start to go south really quick for the people in town as well as the vampires that are attacking. And it has this really cool surprise ending that you really didn't think about, so you didn't see coming. It was never hinted at across any of the three books, but it wraps up really nice, and it's a really cool story. It was written by Steve Niles, illustrated by Ben Templesmith. 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, and Return to Barrow. I recommend, don't get it in this form. Try and buy them individually. If you have to get it this way, just be prepared that it's going to fall apart. If you're a vampire fan, totally recommend this. It's a really good story about vampires. If you're not into comic books, then I wouldn't mess with it, because it is a comic book. But it's super fun read, really well done. The first two endings will leave you like, what? And then the way it wraps up with Return to Barrow, it's a fun story to read. And I really enjoyed it. I didn't try and plow through it. I took my time. It's really fun. Highly recommend it. It was book 2 on the list. The third book, which I'll be starting probably in 2 or 3 days, is called Revelations, and it's by Bentley Little. This one takes place in Alabama, I think. Or no, that was the first one. Arizona, maybe. Arizona, I think, is where it takes place. They all go alphabetically by state. But I'll leave the links for the 50 States, 50 Scares. Go check it out. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Have you read any of these comics? Have you seen the movies? Comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell so you know when my next video will be coming out. Real quick, on my current reading list, I am reading Stephen King's Lacey's Story. I am reading, I don't remember the author, but the book is Axiom's End, and Bentley Little's Revelations. One of those three will be the next book on this channel. I hope you stay tuned for more videos. Until next time, read more books.